Hello and welcome to episode 4 of League of Musings. My name is Joseph Thorne. I am the writer, editor, and owner of eSports Musings. I guess I don't really have a title. I should just call myself the Grand Duke of eSports Musings. Anyway, episode 4, sorry for the delay for this one. Things have been really busy, holidays, as you can see. Busy time for my job, so haven't really had time to record a new episode. And I figured I'd wait until after IEM San Jose to do one. So, as you can see, topics on the right, and let's get right into them with IEM San Jose. Now, I'm not going to talk about the quarterfinals because they weren't really that interesting of games to me, and I didn't see the full sets. I was working, so I only caught the semifinal and finals on VODs. So, Unicorns of Love versus TSM. Now, a lot of people are jumping on TSM for their very poor performance, and let's not lie, it was a very poor performance. I don't think anybody expected Unicorns of Love to come in and 2-0 TSM. It was a 2-0. I think it was a 2-0. I might have to check that, but anyway, I don't think anyone expected Unicorns of Love to win this series, and wow. Anyone who's claiming that they totally saw this coming and that's why they voted for Unicorns of Love to get into IEM San Jose is lying, I would say. At least the majority of people who said that. It was not pretty. Power of Evil thoroughly dominated Bjergsen in the mid lane. Nobody really stood out for TSM. Nobody stepped up and played at their normal caliber of level. I think it's a little early to judge how Santorin is going to fit into this team. It's only 2 games. It's not enough to besmirch Bjergsen's legacy as a TSM player, and it's not enough to set up how Santorin is going to be as TSM's next jungler. I think anyone who's making predictions at this point, it's a little too early. I think waiting until maybe 4 or 5 weeks into the spring split is probably a better point in the season to determine how Santorin is fitting in to their roster. I won't lie, I was very impressed by Unicorns of Love. I think we sort of saw them exposed a little bit against Cloud9, but I'll get into that a little bit later. You know, there's a lot of factors that could be going into TSM's performance. Obviously, it's a new patch, new jungle, new map, and new jungler. But you know, I guess maybe they're underestimating Unicorns of Love to a certain extent, but I certainly did not expect them to go in and play as poorly as they did. I don't think anybody did, as I said before. So, yeah, I was thoroughly flummoxed at their performance. So, yeah, I mean, clearly they have a lot of work to do over the holiday season, and when they get back together as a team, I don't think they're going to struggle during the spring split. I think they'll get their shit together and contend for a top spot, but it was disconcerting to see how poor of a performance that was. It's not that IEM San Jose is a very, major tournament, but they could have gone to Katowice if they had won and played against some solid international competition, and now we're not going to see that happen. So that's unfortunate. I don't know if it was whether lack of preparation or just the overall changes that have occurred for their team and the map. Who knows? Hats off to Unicorns of Love, though. I know I didn't take my hat completely off, but I'm trying to be festive. Cloud9 versus Alliance. Now, I thought Reckless fit in well, and he looked good on Alliance, but he's clearly not. The 80 carry, even when Tabs is on the team, wasn't their problem. Reckless isn't going to be the problem for this team. And it didn't help that Froggen played very poorly in this series against Cloud9. I think everybody was shocked that he was not up to his usual standard of play. He was clearly struggling. I don't know why or how, because he's such a solid player. I mean, maybe it was just an off weekend for him, but he did not look to be playing as the Froggen that we are normally used to seeing. And there are problems as a team. Sometimes I just feel like they lack decisive mid and late game shot calling, and they've never been the most strategic team in the world. They're very mechanically talented, or I'm not gonna say mechanically, because mechanics, like Thorne made a video about this, about how mechanics means different things to different people, and I really agreed with him on that. So I'm trying to shy away from using that word. And if you haven't seen that video, go and watch it. It's very, very well done, and I agree with a lot of the points he makes in it. But they're a very skilled team. Let me just put it that way. Individually, each player is a pretty skilled player, but they've never really had the same strategic. Their skill level has not matched their level of strategy, I feel like, since they've been together. And even with Reckless, obviously in those games, it didn't seem to match up. And that is, when you're playing a team like Cloud9, you're going to be punished for that, because they have shown time and time again an ability to adapt and an ability to make mid-game strategic decisions that completely swing how a game is going. And those games were pretty close overall. Like, it could have gone either way. But I feel like that's what put Cloud9 over the top against Alliance, is that the fact that they're a very cerebral team, and you can see it. They're well coached. They make very good decisions, and they're willing to take risks, strategic risks that maybe other teams wouldn't want to take. And they always seem to know what to do, even when they're playing from behind. They always seem to know what the next move is that's going to bring them back into the game. And like I said before, I think they thoroughly exposed Unicorns of Love in the final. I mean, that was just High, I think, learned from what happened to Bjergsen, what Power of Evil did to Bjergsen in their series against Unicorns of Love, and he adapted. And I just have to say, I thought Meteos was by far the best player on the Rift this past weekend in San Jose. Or was it this past weekend, or was it 2 weeks ago? I think it was 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry, the days just jumble together at this point for me. I thought Meteos looked outstanding. I thought there was a bigger skill gap between Meteos and the rest of the junglers playing in San Jose than any other position. And he's just proven that whatever you throw at the guy, he seems to be able to figure it out quickly. And he adapted his game to each team that he played, and it's so impressive to watch what he does. He's such a skilled player, and I mean, he's clearly, at least in my book, clearly the top jungler in NA, possibly in all in NA and EU. I think there's a debate to be had that he is the best Western jungler. Cloud9 looked by far the most comfortable on this patch, and if they continue to show this ability to adapt to new patches and quick changes, which is something they struggled with at the beginning of the summer split, excuse me. We all saw that they had a very rocky start to the summer split this year, and I remember hearing a few interviews with their players and talking about how it wasn't necessarily the right patches for their team play style, and how they were struggling to adapt to it, and how High being out with his injury for so long, and then unable to scrim together as a team, force them to force them isn't the right way of saying it. Delayed their ability to sort of get into the swing of the split. And you could see it. They struggled in the early part of the summer, but I don't think they're going to have this problem. I would be through the first half of the spring split. And I know it's a big assumption to base this prediction on one performance, and it's sort of stupid of me to say this because Cloud9 is, if not the best, certainly a top 2 Western team. That I think that they're gonna start the spring very strong, and halfway through the season probably be top 2 in North America. They're by far the most impressive team of the weekend. Like I said, I thought Meteos was the best player, although the MVP went to Sneaky. I understand to a certain degree why it did. He had very impressive games, very good team fighting. His positioning, as always, was very, very strong, but, excuse me, I thought Meteos was the player of the weekend, and Cloud9 looks to continue their dominance in North America based on this performance. All right, next we have the NA Expansion Tournament. Now, I had predicted that Curse Academy and Coast were going to make it through into the LCS, and they did. Both of them. Congratulations to both teams. I felt that played the best, and they were the most consistent teams. I was very, very impressed by Impaler. I know I said this in the last episode. He just looked like a player who was out to win no matter what the cost was. And finally, North America has a Rengar player, even though he's European, but nonetheless, there's somebody in the region, regardless of his origin, that knows how to play the position, not the position, the champion of Rengar, which is exciting because it's a fun champion to watch, and I'm sure that people people who watch Dandy at Worlds got a taste of what I mean. And obviously, he is he is the best jungler in the world, so it's sort of foolish of me to say that it'll be fun to watch Impaler play Rengar based on what other people have done with Rengar, but yeah, he was impressive. I mean, for a North American European jungler, it was very, very cool to see someone who actually knows the champion because it's a fun champion to watch, in my opinion. Curse Academy, not surprising. They have a lot of experience on that team, and it'll be interesting. Okay. It's the first time I've said that, and I even made a note for myself not to say that it'll be interesting because I know that's like my catchphrase, and it's a shitty catchphrase to have, pardon my French. It's a terrible catchphrase. It's not even a catchphrase, it's just a saying, and I say it way too often. So I made a note to myself, so hopefully that'll be the only time I say that during this entire episode. Anyway, Curse Academy. It'll be intriguing. See, there's a BS way around that. It'll be intriguing to see who they're picked up by, who buys them, because obviously the one team rule in the LCS, you can only own one team, one organization, one team. They're in the top division. So I'm intrigued to see who's going to purchase the team, what kind of setup they're going to give the players, whether there's any roster turnover, especially considering that St. Vicious gave an interview to Travis Gafford after they were officially promoted to the LCS, saying that they had been considering disbanding the team like less than a week or two ago, and that's just crazy to me. I had of all the teams in the expansion tournament, I was most confident that Curse Academy was going to make it in, and they proved it. They proved that they're more than deserving of an LCS spot. I can't really make any predictions for how these teams are going to perform in the LCS. I think there's too many unknown factors, considering we don't know what LMQ's roster looks like. We don't know how Dignitas's team is going to synergize. We don't know how Curse's team is going to synergize. TSM has question marks over it. I think the only CLG has question marks over it with all of the roster turnover. I think the only sure thing going into the spring split is Cloud9 is going to be good. Other than that, it's a complete toss-up, and it's going to be I think it's going to be one of the most exciting splits because of the format change, and hopefully Riot will release information on what the schedule is going to be like. And I am sitting here praying to the heavens that they eliminate Super Weeks and they reduce the number of regular season games. God, the season was too long. Let's be less NBA where you can coast into the play until the ramp up to the playoff season, and be more like the NFL where every game matters. Just more like the NFL in terms of the games, not in terms of the other drama that has enveloped that league lately. Anyway, like I said, can't make predictions as to how they're going to perform because there's just too much unknown. There's way too much unknown going into the North American spring split. So I'm excited for the season. I'm very excited. I think it's going to be very intriguing. It's going to be very exciting, and I wouldn't be surprised if we had a very topsy-turvy standings for the majority of the spring split. Fusion, God, it hurt. It legitimately hurt to see those players after their loss to Coast in the losers bracket final. All of them, they're all known names. They've all been around the scene, either in North America or Korea. And I made this point on Twitter when I was watching the games live, but Fusion for me looked like a baseball team that had great starting pitching, great middle relief, but just had terrible closers. And their inability to close games was very disconcerting. And at some point, that inability to close was going to come back and bite them. And it did. It really did. They went up 2-0 against not only just their ability to close individual games, but their ability to close the series against Coast. I mean, my God, you should have been able, should have been. The opportunity was there for them to close 3 times, and they couldn't do it. And I don't know if that's a knock on their mental fortitude as a team. I don't know if that's just, if Coast just exploited their weaknesses. But I was, it was sad because it really was sad for me, for the fan base, for the Fusion's fan base, and for the community in general. Because the last 3 teams at Coast, Curse Academy, and Fusion, legitimately, I wish all 3 of them could have made it into the LCS. And I don't know what the future holds for Fusion. They just, go back and watch that Game 5. They played so passively. They weren't contesting dragons. They weren't forcing objectives. It was just, I just felt like they stood there and watched Coast take dragon after dragon, and it's been shown in 420 that getting a lot of dragons, getting those 3rd, 4th, 5th dragon buffs is, if you get to that 5th dragon, I think Fusion was probably the only team in the expansion tournament that got 5 dragons and managed to lose the game, and that was against Final 5, and I think Game 1. But if you get those 4th and 5th dragons, then you should be able to close the game out, and them allowing and not contesting the early dragons and the 4th and just not contesting dragons. They were playing way too passively. I think they played Game 5 scared, and I legitimately believe that is the biggest reason why they didn't win that game. It sucks though, because I like a lot of those players. And I feel bad for them, and I hope they stay together and give it a go in the Challenger Series. But it's God, I can't imagine how difficult a decision that's going to be for their management and for their players in the next couple weeks, because they have an automatic spot. They've automatically qualified for the Challenger Series, so I don't know. That's tough. That is, I hope. Let me just put it this way. I hope that none of the players, and I hope that the management of Fusion do not jump into a decision this week, because I feel like you need to give your players time to mentally recover from what just happened before they rush into any type of decision. So, yeah. Excuse me. Probably the biggest news to come out recently, and I know I'm not talking, I'm not talking about Fnatic. I'm not talking about Peke's new team Origin. I've been bouncing around a few ideas, article ideas that I wanted to talk about or write about these topics, so I'm sort of avoiding them for now. But if I don't end up writing them, then I'm sure I'll talk about that. Fnatic and Peke's new team Origin in the next episode of League of Musings. And so probably the biggest news in the League of Legends eSports world was Uzi, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Uzi going to OMG. And I think Thorin tweeted out that he thought that this was the biggest blockbuster move that has ever occurred in League of Legends eSports. And I sat and I thought about that, and there's no other move that compares to how big this is. This is a world-class AD carry joining a world-class team, and it's sort of like, the creation of the Chinese super team, although I personally hate the phrase super team because it reminds me of the Super Friends, and the Super Friends is the reason why nobody takes Aquaman seriously, and Aquaman is fucking cool, and he should be given respect, but that is neither here nor there. That's just a little nerd tangent. Anyway, I'm very excited to see this team. I have a lot of questions as to how this team is going to function, because Uzi, for me, has always been a player that has required a lot of resources to be successful, and I'm curious to see if there's going to be enough kills and gold to go around for them to form a cohesive unit, because that's always, that's the trouble in when any blockbuster move or trade is made in any sport, whether it's League of Legends or the NBA or the English Premier League. If you have a move like that It's always becomes a question of team synergy and how are the players going to mesh with it? How are their skills going to mesh with one another? And Uzi for me is like he's sort of like a Dwight Howard or an Allen Iverson type player where he just requires a lot requires a lot of touches, requires a lot of shots, um, and sort of can get to the mountaintop with his team, but is never really to like is always pushed off the mountain at the last second, and you've seen that in the finals of Worlds the last 2 years. And I don't know. I'm very intrigued. OMG is my favorite Chinese team to watch. I'm a huge go-going fanboy because I like top laners that can hard carry games, and that's not something we see very often these days. But that's the thing. Like, how are you going to mesh Uzi and Cool and Go-Going, all players that are good to great, and that's the thing. Is there enough to go around? Is it going to be Uzi and four guys on the other four members of OMG doing their best Oliver Twist impression? Just be like, please, sir, can I have some more? And then Uzi is just like, no, more? Like, I don't know. I'm very intrigued to see. That was a terrible impression, by the way. But not, that's neither here nor there. I'm very intrigued to see how this team is going to function. I hope they're successful because I really like OMG, and I think that if they manage to figure out a way for all five of these players to work, question mark as to who their support's going to be, whether it's going to be Cloud or Data 7 or whoever. Whatever five players they end up fielding, it's going to be. The biggest question is, are they going to be able to play together, or is it just going to be five individual players but not a team? And if they're able to put it all together, I think that they have the best chance of any non-Korean team at this point in time, like looking far into the future. And obviously so much can change between now and next Worlds, but if they figure out how to play as a team, then I would say that they are the preseason favorites to make a deep Worlds run, because that's a stacked roster, and like I said, if they can figure it out, then watch out, rest of the world. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna get kind of serious for a minute. There was a competitive ruling last week. I'm sure most of you have read it. That CLG was fined 10 grand for poaching Scara from Dignitas while he was under contract. Speaking to him about moving to CLG while he was under contract, aka the definition of poaching. I wrote an article about this and thought that it was an absolutely necessary punishment. That poaching, whether or not it is common in esports, which I'm sure it is, if there's enough evidence of poaching for there to be a fine or like a judgment based on it, then it needs to be punished, because this poaching, to me, is could be one of the most damaging things for any sport. And I guess I really don't want to delve too much into this issue, because I would encourage you to read the article I wrote. And I guess I should preface this and say, like, I'm a CLG fan, and I completely agree with this ruling. And I feel like any CLG fan who's out there and complaining about this just doesn't understand the severity of poaching or tapping up and how damaging it could be to professional sports. Go read the article that I posted. It's my most recent article. It's on my Twitter. It's pinned to my Twitter page. Go to eSports Musings, esportsmusings.com. Should be the top post there. Yeah, I think this is a serious issue, and I completely agree with Riot's decision to fine them. Lastly, I am Cologne. Let's see. I gotta pull up the bracket really quick. All right. Well, I know nothing about Aces Full or the Dolphins of Wall Street, so I feel like it would be foolish of me to talk about them. I think it's very likely, if Dignitas and Rocket have properly prepared for this tournament, especially that Rocket, I'll get to Rocket in a moment. If they properly prepared for this tournament, I would be very surprised if they weren't able to make it to the semifinals. I think the two biggest questions, and this is why I'm glad that these two teams are potentially facing one another in the semis, are my favorite team, CLG, and Rocket playing each other, because Rocket is playing with Ryu right now, who was on Millennium briefly. Previously, KT Bullets, blah, 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 blah. We all know his video of getting pwned by Faker. Probably his most famous moment for Western League of Legends fans. Anyway, I have no idea how well he's going to fit into this roster, and it sort of brings up the question. And this is another. God, I wish I had put this on the topic sheet. Mithy and Nuke Duck. I'll talk about that next week. Anyway, because there have been rumors that Nuke Duck is the mid laner that Rocket is looking at for the spring split. And if Ryu impresses at I Am Clone, they'll go in a different direction and they'll stick with him. It's going to be. I'm excited. I really hope that they play CLG. And I know that CLG isn't going to be playing with Xmithy, who was officially announced, by the way. Big surprise. And by the way, let me just say this. I know CLG is playing with Think Cards, so they're not going to be their complete roster. It's going to be like last year Clone when they played with Tricks instead of Dexter. CLG is getting is getting a ton of criticism for their off-season roster moves, but I think this is a team that just needs to be given a chance because we don't know what Xmithy is as a jungler. No one's seen him play competitively in a very long time. So anyone who's making predictions about how they're going to perform, I feel like that's premature because we don't know what he is as a player. And if he's at least serviceable and has better synergy with Zion and with his top laner and Link than Dexter did with Seraph and Link or Nien and Link, then I think that it's an improvement. And if the conditions, emotional, mental conditions in their household as a team improve, then I think there's nothing. How do I phrase this? I don't know how to phrase exactly what I'm thinking or articulate what I'm thinking right now, but I guess the sky's the limit for CLG. We don't know what they're going to be as a team. Let's be realistic. Like we don't know. We haven't seen Link play since the promotion relegation against Kursk. We haven't seen any of the players play professionally, and we haven't seen Xmithy play in an even longer time. I think that they're. And it's unfortunate that Xmithy is having visa issues and can't go with Team to Cologne, and they're playing with ThinkHard, because I really want to see this the CLG roster, and I really want to see how they're going to perform. Excuse me. Dignitas on the other side of the bracket, I don't even know what Gambit's full roster is right now, so I'm going to refrain from commenting on them too much. I think I'm going to do my next episode on Sunday night after Cologne is all wrapped up in a nice tidy bow, so I can sort of do a recap and talk about some of the topics I didn't talk about tonight. But I don't know anything about Gamsu and Core, their new AD carry and their new top laner, so I can't really comment on how they're going to fit into the team. That's the thing. This offseason has had so many moves for so many different teams. I feel like Cloud9 is like the only Western team that hasn't had not significant, but it hasn't had any roster turnover. And that's why I said before that I think they're the only sure thing going into the spring split. But back to IEM Clone, I think this is a complete toss-up. I think that it's going to be one of the 4 LCS teams that are. Well, it's going to be it's going to be Gambit, Chronologic Gaming, Rocket, or Dignitas who are going to win. And I legitimately don't know who it's going to be because there's been so much time since we've seen so many of these teams play, and there's been roster changes for, I think, all of these teams. So, I don't know, I think I'm more excited about Cologne than I was about San Jose because I felt like San Jose, I don't know. I guess I'm more excited because I'm a CLG fan, and that's just me being a fanboy, so I guess I'll just leave it at that. Like I said, if I don't post an article about Fnatic, Reckless, and XPK forming Origin sometime in the next week, then I'll talk about it on next Sunday on the next episode of League of Musings. Just an aside, I'm not surprised that Alliance and Kaboom was voted the game of the year on LOLesports.com. But if people legitimately believe that was the game of the year, then wow, I don't think we're watching the same game because that was a big upset does not always mean that the game was good, because I feel like games. Okay, and I said this because my pick for game of the year, and I wrote an article about this, was the Game 4 KT Arrows, Samsung Blue, OGN Championship, Summer Championship Playoff Grand Final. I thought that was by far the best game the year that I saw. It was, okay, and this is for me a perfect League of Legends game combines entertainment value, high quality play, and strategy, and good strategy. And I feel like the KT Arrows versus Samsung Blue in that game combined all of those factors. And if you like jungling, if you were a jungler, then you go right now, get out of this stream, or not this stream, get out of this video, exit out, go to esportsmusings.com, scroll down, should be the second article, my game of the year pick, and watch that VOD, because it is an amazing game, and Kakao plays out of his mind with some of the most ridiculous plays that you will ever see. And it was just, I mean, the team fights in that game were just crazy. There were there were like every team fight in that match for me. If even one of those team fights had been in another game with other teams, a team fight like that, then it would have been remarked upon as a great game. Maybe not a great game, but a good game because of that team fight alone. And this game had like 4 team fights that were just like jaw-dropping, what the hell is going on, what am I watching type moments. And I'm just like, Kaboom versus Alliance it was an upset. It was a huge upset. Everyone agrees on that, but like, it wasn't a great game. And it certainly wasn't the game of the year. And I'm glad that article that announced the game of the year on LOLesports.com had an editor's choice, because their choice, Fnatic versus OMG, was very exciting, and I feel like combined the same factors that I laid out before. I don't think it was as good as the game as the one I picked, but hey, that's just me. Anyway, rant done. Sorry, I just had to get that out there. I know I didn't put it on my, no, this way, topics list. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to do a I Am Cologne wrap-up episode on Sunday, and probably talk about a few other topics there. Hopefully this week I should have possibly Player of the Year and or Team of the Year articles coming out. Hint, they're going to be Korean. Shocker. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. This League of Musings episode 4. Yeah. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I'll see you guys on Sunday. Take care.